Good evening. A day after the Union Cabinet was expanded and the Shiv Sena did not find a place in it, today the party finally drew a line in the sand. No more humiliation. The Sena is now going to sit in the opposition. They've even applied for the Leader of Opposition post in the new Maharashtra Assembly. Welcome to the news tonight. I'm Zaka Jacob. These are our headlines. The Shiv Sena decides to sit in the opposition in Maharashtra. It stakes claim to the Leader of Opposition post. The NCP says it will back the BJP government during the trust vote. Newly appointed ministers here at the centre are allotted portfolios. Prime Minister Modi meets the extended Union Cabinet, says get ready for the winter session of Parliament. But before that, the Prime Minister will be leaving on a three-nation tour tomorrow. Jobs and the economy are likely to be his focus in Australia, Myanmar and Fiji. A draft civil aviation policy is unveiled. The government says it can consider privatizing Air India in the future. No timelines, though. And this is a big diplomatic story. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe attempt to break the ice at the APEC summit. This is their first meeting since either man came to office. So our top story tonight. On day one of the new Maharashtra Assembly, the Shiv Sena has made it clear it's not going to join the BJP government. Its party chief has demanded the Leader of Opposition post, and that, in many senses, ends days of political uncertainty. Will they, won't they? Finally, just 2 more days to go for the crucial floor test. It's expected to happen on Wednesday. The BJP will now have to bank on the NCP to sail through the trust vote.
It seems that BJP and Shiv Sena have hit a point of no return in Maharashtra. On day one of the special session, newly elected Sena MLAs occupied the seats meant for opposition members in the assembly. The party made it clear that it is no more in talks with BJP about joining the government. Party chief Uddhav Thackeray has written a letter to the Secretary General asking for the post of Leader of Opposition in the new assembly.
हमारे विधानसभा के जो गठन नेता है एकनाथ जी शिंदे, वो शिवसेना पक्ष प्रमुख उद्धव साहब ठाकरे उनसे बात करके वो जो निवडणूक प्रक्रिया है उसके बारे में हमारा निर्णय जो है वो स्पष्ट करेंगे। सुबह 9 बजे तक बाद में शिवसेना और बीजेपी में कुछ चर्चा नहीं हुई है, ऐसी मेरी जानकारी है।
शिवसेना पक्ष प्रमुख जी की जो अपेक्षा है उसे खरा उतरने की कोशिश हम सब लोग मिलकर करेंगे। ये 63 एमएलए जो है एक टीम की तरह इस सदन में काम करेंगे।
BJP is still hopeful. The party hopes there is still some scope to resolve the issue.
Some problems take care of themselves.
मैंडेट के साथ शिव सेना चले और बिना किसी दुराग्रह के या सोच के निश्चित तौर से हम चाहेंगे शिव सेना से बातचीत जारी है। मुझे लगता है कि निश्चित रूप से रास्ता निकलेगा।
BJP is facing number crunch ahead of the crucial floor test on Wednesday to prove its majority. Without Shiv Sena, it is dependent on NCP to survive the test. NCP has assured to back BJP in trust vote, but it has also made it clear that there are no backdoor efforts to partner BJP in the government.
Unless and until certain positive steps are taken by certain sensible people, there will not be stable government, and I don't want the state should go for vote within practically 3 months or 4 months.
On Sunday, Sena chief has served an ultimatum to BJP, saying it will vote against the Fadnavis government if BJP takes NCP's support in trust vote. The ball is now in BJP's court to decide the future course of action. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
So 10 days ago, Uddhav Thackeray was at the Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai. He was attending Devendra Fadnavis' inauguration as Chief Minister. What went wrong in 10 days? They say a week is a long time in politics. Anant Bal Bagaikar is the Bureau Chief of Sakal. He's now joining us live on the news tonight. What went wrong? It seemed like 10 days ago that things were sorted. In a day or two, it would eventually be that the Sena will join the Maharashtra government. But now, have things reached a point of no return?
Actually, it was all expected. Means, if I can recall that on one of your programs only and on your channel only, I did mention that this alliance is heading for a talaq, and I think it has happened today. But the way Shiv Sena was putting pressure on BJP for getting some portfolios, at the same time deputy chief ministership and BJP leadership and especially the Prime Minister and the President of BJP, both were not very keen to accept that pressure or to surrender to that pressure by Shiv Sena. I think there was no meeting ground.
What about the cabinet expansion that happened in the interim? The fact that the Shiv Sena was expecting another cabinet minister's post, that did not happen. Instead, to rub salt on their wounds, Suresh Prabhu, who used to be a Shiv Sena member, has now become the railways minister, possibly poached by the BJP. How much did that play a factor?
Actually, it was in a way rubbing salt on the wounds of Shiv Sena by nominating Suresh Prabhu for the union cabinet post, because Suresh Prabhu was in Shiv Sena just for namesake. Otherwise, he was all along with BJP, and also he was in a way, directly, indirectly, for last almost say 5 to 7 years, he was part of Modi's team, backroom team. So actually taking Suresh Prabhu in the union cabinet was rubbing salt. So and
what happens now?
Offering the real Shiv Sena man, Anil Desai, the MOS.
What happens now on Wednesday when Devendra Fadnavis will have to face a trust vote? Most likely he'll have to take the support of the NCP to sail through that trust vote. What happens to all those allegations against the NCP, against Sharad Pawar? Mr. Modi called it the National Corruption Party. Yeah. What happens to all of that?
No. Actually, for the first time, if we really analyze it politically, for the first time, Shiv Sena has played a very clever card yesterday. If many people have seen Uddhav Thackeray's press conference yesterday, where he had said that we are ready to support BJP, but if BJP takes the support of NCP, then obviously we will not.
Okay.
He made it very clear.
We will know on Wednesday which way.
Now the ball is in the court of BJP, whether to accept NCP's support or again try to pacify Shiv Sena.
No, it's going to be interesting because when the trust vote happens, and if Mr. Pawar has instructed all his MLAs to vote for the government, I don't know what is it that the BJP can do to prevent the NCP MLAs from voting for the government. But we'll wait and see. Just a couple of more days. On Wednesday, the trust vote happens. Meanwhile, we were talking about this. The Modi government expanded its cabinet as well as other ministers of state on Sunday. There's been a portfolio reallocation as well. And that has signaled a drastic mix of fortunes. Obviously, some people are happy because they've either been inducted into the ministry or they've been given better portfolios. A lot of people are unhappy as well, but they may not say so. Here's a roundup of what the portfolio allocations have been and who are the ones who've lost out. Chief among them, of course, the likes of Sadanand Gowda, Harshvardhan, Nitin Gadkari, Prakash Javadekar and Krishnapal.
When newly appointed Science and Technology Minister Dr. Harshvardhan reached his office on Monday, he knew he would have to answer a lot of media questions, primarily about why he lost the health ministry, his area of specialization. Questions that he chose to evade.
आपके पास 1000 सवाल हो सकते हैं, लेकिन आज मेरे माइंड में एक ही एजेंडा है कि मुझे अपने डिपार्टमेंट के लोगों से मिलना है.
Sadanand Gowda was another person who suffered a huge blow in the portfolio redistribution. He lost railways to get the law ministry instead. Reports say that just last week, Gowda brought in a few trusted people to the ministry. Officers who are now as perplexed as he is about the ministerial change. Nitin Gadkari also lost one of his additional portfolios, his loss ending up as Chaudhary Birendra Singh's gain.
It's a big responsibility in a way, because this ministry comprises of 4 very important departments and covers almost 70% of the population of the country. And the confidence the Prime Minister has reposed in me, I hope that I will come to his expectation.
Rajya Sabha member Prakash Javadekar also had an important role in the government, with portfolios that included environment and forest, information and broadcasting and parliamentary affairs. Although it cannot be said that his current brief of environment and forest is by any means insignificant, it does not have the same ring as the other two.
प्रधानमंत्री किस ग्राउंड्स पर किसका विभाग बदलते हैं, किसको कहाँ यूज करना है, उनका अधिकार होता है, वो तो सवाल हम नहीं पूछ सकते।
First time MP from Faridabad, Krishnpal lost the Road and Surface Transport Ministry, getting social justice and empowerment instead. While none of these ministers may be complaining about the work reallocation, their body language does suggest something else. Visham Sundar, Vishal Dhaya for Rajya Sabha TV.
All right, some people are unhappy, and that's almost inevitable in any cabinet expansion. We're still in conversation with Anandpal Bagaikar of Sakal. He's a bureau chief there. I want to look at the big picture. Mr. Modi's favorite theme during the campaign was maximum governance, minimum government. Now he's gone from 44 in his ministry to 66. The UPA too was in the same ballpark as 66 in its ministry. So where's the whole concept of maximum governance, minimum government?
No, I think these jugglery of words, I think I just don't go by that. Means that is my personal view. But maximum governance, yes. And if a government has to govern a country, a huge country like India, it needs proper hands and sufficient hands. And I think 66, number 66 is, I think, fair enough for governing the country like India. And what we are discussing now, that some ministers had to give up their portfolios, some of the portfolio. I think these ministers were burdened, especially Prakash Javadekar. He was handling 3 portfolios. Nitin Gadkari, he was handling 2 portfolios, means one rural development, other surface transport and shipping. And I think Harshvardhan was health minister. I think he shifted to comparatively less
Science and technology.
Science and technology. I think that we should consider it from the Delhi Assembly elections point of view.
But what the other accusation that the Congress has made today is that a good number of these ministers have criminal cases pending against them, have FIRs pending against them. They've taken the name of the new member of parliament from Agra, for example, who has more than 20 cases against him.
Yeah,
Again, on the issue of criminal elements within politics, what Mr. Modi said during the campaign and the reflections on his ministry seem to be on 2 different pages.
But now you see, there is allegation against one TDP minister who has been inducted yesterday only. Congress had alleged that there are several cases of irregularities, financial irregularities against that minister. But I think Modi must have taken all these.
No, those are financial irregularities. There's a junior minister, HRD, who has a criminal case against him.
Yeah. But we should not forget that in the first ministry of Modi, there was one Mr. Sanjeev Kumar, I think Balian, the person from Muzaffarnagar,
yes,
who had charges against him for inciting communal tension and trouble. So I think all political parties means one should not forget that the same BJP did not allow Mr. Manmohan Singh to introduce his ministers in the parliament only because there were some tainted ministers in his cabinet.
Okay.
So I think
at least with Dr. Manmohan Singh, he had the defense of most of these tainted ministers are from allies, coalition compulsions, and so on.
Yeah, but
I guess Mr. Modi doesn't have that crutch.
Yeah,
we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much, Anandpal Bagaikar from Sakal, the news bureau chief, there giving us his thoughts and perspective into what's happening in Maharashtra. The Shiv Sena now drawing a line in the sand there, asking for the leader of opposition post, and also reactions pouring in to the first cabinet expansion of the Modi government. Now, in the midst of all of that, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will leave on a 3-nation tour tomorrow. It's aimed at re-engaging with Southeast Asian nations. In the words of the Prime Minister, it's not just look east, but act east. The tour will be from the 11th of November to the 19th. It's touted as a landmark trip. The Indian Prime Minister will be visiting Australia and Fiji after a gap of almost 3 decades. He's expected to make a strong pitch for improving job opportunities as well as building people-to-people contacts.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will embark on a 9-day foreign tour of 3 nations from Tuesday. His tour of Myanmar, Australia and Fiji is expected to inject momentum to his Act East policy.
There are 3 C's, if you would like to know. One is commerce, the other is connectivity, and a third is culture. In addition, he will also focus on issues of a strategic nature.
Modi will attend two key summits, the ASEAN-India Summit and the East Asia Summit on 12th and 13th November in Myanmar, and later the G20 Summit in Brisbane.
Focus will be on people-to-people contacts, increasing the civilizational linkages, making sure that there are enough studies which are conducted on the linkages with the ASEAN countries.
We are demanding that there should be a global change in the energy mix. We are seeing a large portion of energy markets which are really dominated by not necessarily by free competition. So there should be more transparency in its operation. And the global energy mix, when it changes, it should also result into bringing more renewables and more clean energy into the field.
The prime focus of the visits will be issues related to economy and employment generation. Modi is also expected to renew the country's commitment to a global response to deal with cross-border tax avoidance and evasion. Akhilesh Suman's report with Bureau Inputs for Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, Civil Aviation Minister Ashok Gajapati Raju today said the government is not ruling out the privatization of Air India, not now, but sometime in the future. He did clarify that there is no proposal right now on the table.
No privatization for Air India right away, but the government says the national carrier will soon have a roadmap from an experts committee.
Why should we close our options? Let us have a more conscious decision. When a decision arrives, we arrive at a decision.
The draft civil aviation policy makes radical departures from the past, starting with recommending the listing of state-run Airports Authority of India and chopper firm Pawan Hans on stock exchanges. It further proposes to enhance regional air connectivity, develop 6 major metro airports as international hubs, create more airports through PPP mode, rationalize jet fuel cost, promote air cargo, and improve passenger facilitation.
We want to develop a transparent policy which everybody can understand. When you have something opaque, it lends itself to allegations.
The minister also gave a time frame of 6 months to list Pawan Hans since it's already a registered company. Efforts to beef up Air India operations, he said, could also include a stake sale as well. Kriti Mishra, Rajya Sabha TV.
We're going to take a break here in the program. When we return, at least 46 people are killed in a suicide attack in a Nigerian school. That and more international stories when the news tonight returns. We're back right after this. Welcome back. You're watching News Tonight. I'm Zaka Jacob. As it prepares to release its first list of candidates for the upcoming Delhi Assembly elections, the Aam Aadmi Party is facing rebellion within its ranks. MS Dheer is the Jangpura MLA. He's criticized the party, saying it lacks intra-party democracy. Mr. Dheer also praised Prime Minister Narendra Modi amid reports that he and 5 other members of the Aam Aadmi Party may join the BJP. The party's Political Affairs Committee decided to drop these 6 former legislators as they are unhappy with their performance.
इसमें कोई शक नहीं, कुछ 5-7 आदमी ऐसे थे, मैं उनकी आशाएं पूरी नहीं कर रहा था, उनकी डिमांड्स कोई पूरी नहीं कर रहा था, तो वो लोग मेरे विधानसभा में पूरे नेगेटिविटी फैला रहे थे, दी साहब काम नहीं कर रहे। डेमोक्रेसी है या नहीं है, मैं अभी नहीं कहता है या नहीं है। आज मैंने मोदी साहब की तारीफ कर दी तो सबको पता नहीं क्या हो गया, मैं बड़ा हैरान हूँ इस बात।
हाँ वो तो है, जिसकी टिकट कटती है वही कहता है डेमोक्रेसी नहीं है पार्टी। अभी एक मिनट, अभी टिकट किसकी कटेगी किसकी नहीं कटेगी ये हमने डिसाइड ही नहीं किया। ये स्पेकुलेशंस मीडिया में चल रहे हैं, अभी तो असेसमेंट चल रही है सबकी।
Meanwhile, here's all the other news from across the country in Nationwide. The CBI today told a special court that it had enough evidence against all the coal scam accused. Now, this, of course, is a marked departure, a complete U-turn, as the agency had said that it had already filed a closure report in this case. After this latest submission, the special court will now reconsider the closure report. The next hearing is on the 25th. Gujarat will become the first state where voting has been made compulsory in local body elections. State Governor O.P. Kohli approved the Gujarat Local Authorities Laws Bill of 2009, which also provides for 50% reservation for women in institutions of local self-governance. The Indian Navy Chief Admiral Robin Dhawan today admitted that chances of survival for the 4 missing Navy personnel seem remote. The Navy will, however, continue to search for another 7 days. The 4 sailors are missing since Friday when a torpedo recovery vessel with 29 personnel on board sank off the coast of Visakhapatnam Friday. 1 sailor was killed. The others on board have been rescued. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is reported to have spoken to Sri Lankan President Mahinda Rajapaksa about the 5 Indian fishermen on the death row in Sri Lanka. The Ministry of External Affairs says the government is attaching the highest priority to this case. The issue has also triggered protests in Tamil Nadu, with hundreds of lawyers boycotting work at the Madras High Court. Another day, another historic high for the BSE Sensex. After hitting that high, of course, it slipped into the red. The high was 28,027. The Sensex hit the 28,000 mark on strong optimism shown by traders. However, the fall after hitting the record was led by losses in some of the heavyweights, L&T, ONGC, Tata Motors and ICICI. The Nifty too slipped from a lifetime high of 83.83. It closed just about 7 points up at 83.44. Some international news now, and there's been a big diplomatic breakthrough between China and Japan. The leaders of both countries met on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Beijing. That's the first time they've done since either of them came to office. Relations have been cold, sometimes even bordering on hostile for the last couple of years, over a bunch of uninhabited islands out in the East China Sea. The wheels of diplomacy grind ever so slowly, but grind they do. And here's why. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe arriving at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing for the APEC summit. Abe was the first to arrive, a clear departure from protocol. And then, the moment that the world has been waiting for, as the Chinese President Xi Jinping shakes hands with the Japanese Prime Minister. This is a photo op for posterity, and then a tentative handshake. After the tenuous greeting, both leaders met behind closed doors. That meeting, though, was not open to the media. This momentous diplomatic breakthrough coming just 3 days after both countries agreed to work on improving ties. China and Japan have been at loggerheads for the last 2 years over these rocky islands in the East China Sea where no human being lives. These islands are merely 7.5 square kilometers, but they have the potential of sparking off a war between the 2 biggest economies of Asia. China calls them Diaoyu, Japan Senkakus. Back in Beijing, this diplomatic coup has not gone unnoticed. The Americans in particular are breathing a huge sigh of relief.
I want to be clear that the United States welcomes this initiative. We think that any steps that the 2 countries can take to improve the relationship and reduce the tensions is helpful not just to those 2 countries, but it's helpful to the region.
But building sustainable, long-term peace between Beijing and Tokyo can be an onerous task. China wants Prime Minister Abe to stop his visits to the controversial Yasukuni Shrine. Such a promise, though, would be politically suicidal for Abe and his conservative credentials. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. Meanwhile, at least 46 students have been killed by a suicide bomber at a school in Nigeria today. The explosion is believed to have been caused by a suicide bomber dressed as a student. According to the survivors, around 2,000 students had gathered when the explosion tore through the school. Militant group Boko Haram is believed to have carried out the attack. The group has previously carried out deadly attacks on schools. Boko Haram has intensified its attacks in the last few weeks after turning down a purported ceasefire agreement with the government. More international stories in Global Buzz. An informal referendum for Catalonia showed that more than 80% voted in favor of independence from Spain. The voting took place Sunday, despite Spain's constitutional court ruling out the holding of a formal referendum. More than 2 million people took part in that ballot. China and the United States have agreed to extend the terms of short-term visas for each other's citizens. US President Barack Obama made the announcement on day 1 of his visit to China. This is the second time he's visiting that country. The deal comes at a time when both countries have pledged efforts towards closer trade and business ties. During his 3-day stay in China for the APEC summit, Obama is also expected to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping. At least 14 people were arrested in Mexico City after protests over the suspected murder of a bunch of students. Protesters flared up. Protests, in fact, flared up in the capital city since Saturday. According to some reports, the protesters attacked the National Palace. They burnt down the main door. They even painted slogans on its walls. The fresh protest comes days after Mexican authorities claimed that the drug gang murdered 43 students acting on the orders of local police. Some sports stories now. The BCCI has picked up a 19-member squad for the upcoming 4-test series against Australia. This is the big news point. Captain Mahendra Singh Dhoni will miss the first test starting in Brisbane from the 4th of December because of an injury. He's expected to be back starting the second test. In his absence, Virat Kohli will be leading the side. Among others, Karn Sharma and Lokesh Rahul are likely to make their test debuts down under. They're part of the 19. Suresh Raina, who last played a test match in 2012, has also been recalled to the side. More sports stories coming up in our special segment, Sportsbeat. The Supreme Court has adjourned hearing on the Justice Mudgal Committee's report on IPL spot fixing. The next hearing is going to be Friday. The Mudgal panel had submitted its final report back on the 3rd of November in a sealed envelope. The court said it will decide Friday which part of the report will be made public. Roger Federer defeated Milos Raonic to move into the second round of the ATP World Tour Finals in London. It was an easy win, 6-1, 7-6, sweet revenge for his loss against the Canadian just last week. Federer will now play against Japan's Kei Nishikori in the second Group B match Tuesday. Nico Rosberg ended title rival Lewis Hamilton's winning streak at the Brazilian Grand Prix. In a close race, Hamilton finished second, behind Rosberg by just a little over a second. The win reduces Hamilton's lead in the title race to 17 points. Former Australian captain Richie Benaud is being treated for skin cancer. Benaud made the revelation in his first public appearance in more than a year. The 84-year-old attributed the cause of his cancer to sun radiation and not wearing cap or hat while playing on the field. Benaud led Australia to 3 successive Ashes victories back in the 1950s and 60s. Apart from his captaincy skills, Richie Benaud, of course, was a world-famous commentator. We pray for him. That's a wrap of the news tonight. This Monday edition from me, Zaka Jacob, and the rest of the team. We'll catch you again tomorrow night, same time. Good night.